to this presentation on citing textual evidence. My name is not Julie Faulkner, and this is Mullet, but this is a presentation that I like to use. I've used this in my face-to-face classroom as well, just to talk about some ways of using textual evidence within your writing. Keep in mind that it is a good practice, and it is highly recommended, almost even required, and yes, I say required, to include at least 2 pieces of textual evidence per body paragraph when you're writing a 5-paragraph essay. One thing that the students find to be somewhat problematic is we usually look for direct evidence. Students often include indirect evidence where they summarize a particular paragraph or an event in the story, and that's fine, but you also do need to include direct evidence, and that's what we're looking for when we're counting that too, is direct evidence. And by direct evidence, I mean quotes. So direct evidence is where you quote a direct quote out of the story, out of the paper, whatever it is you're using as your evidence, and then put in quotation marks and provide a citation, an MLA proper citation. Other things that you should be doing is introducing and following up the quote. That's what we're going to talk about today. There are several methods of doing that. There's several different acronyms. One acronym that we use here at my school is RACES, and actually we've extended that to RACES, where we call it in the way to answer a open-ended question. R stands for restate the question. A is answer, C is cite, E is explain, C is cite, E is explain, and sum up. So that could be a method for writing 1 paragraph. It could also be a method for writing a constructed response, for example, your benchmark tests. Milestone tests often require a paragraph answer, so following that method, RACES, is a great method. For including textual evidence within your paragraphs, we also can use the Oreo method, which is what this particular presentation uses. In a little bit, I'm going to actually turn on my webcam and take you on a little tour of my classroom here at my middle school, and I'm going to show you what I have on my wall that I have put up in order to help my students, my face-to-face students, just have little pointers in how to include textual evidence as well as how to follow it up. Because the part that students often trip up on is the explain part. You cannot just simply throw a quote into the middle of a paragraph with quotations without introducing it and following it up. You have to sandwich it, which is why we call the Oreo method. So let's take a look at this. I'm going to skip through some of these slides because I find them unnecessary. These are just the Common Core links. So what we're going to look at is determine that there is a need for textual evidence and to demonstrate an understanding of how to cite correctly. Some essential questions. What is textual evidence? Why do you need textual evidence? When do you use textual evidence? And is there a method to putting my citations into my paper, which is MLA? Textual evidence is facts that you have researched for internet, articles, newspapers, charts, etc. to go with point. Most of the essays within this course, within American literature, are literary analysis. You do have some level of a research paper, but for the most part you can quote, for most of your essays you'll be literary analysis. So for example, you quote The Crucible, or you'll quote Huckleberry Finn, or you will quote The Great Gatsby. And you will pretty much exclusively quote only those. The sizes of these essays does not really include outside research. You might write outside research and use criticism when you're in college, but we don't really focus on that much in this course. You need textual evidence to better prove your point, to give your essay credit, and to support your ideas. Okay, so you need textual evidence to support your point. Well, the way I always tell my students, both face-to-face and online, is to present your opinion, your thesis statement, as if it was a fact, which is why I do not allow students to use words like I or me or you or myself, or even the word opinion. Present your opinion as a fact and defend it with evidence from the text. How do I know that the third little pig was the wisest? I know that the third little pig was the wisest because he built his house out of brick, and it was therefore the strongest house. Okay? Obviously, I wouldn't use words like I know, but I could say the third little pig was the wisest because he built his house out of brick, and therefore it was the strongest. I use textual evidence to support my opinion that the third little pig is the wisest. In order to give your essay credit, you don't want to have all indirect quotes. You do want to have some direct quotes that you're directly quoting the author and the text. And you want to support your ideas with textual evidence. You need to use textual evidence every single time you answer a question about a text or write an essay. So every time you answer a question, whether it be a constructed response, for example, on a milestone test. I believe even the SATs does that, but I think the SAT requires a full essay. And every time you answer a question in an essay, you need to have textual evidence all the time. We're going to use the Oreo method in this presentation. I will also show you my posters that I have in my room for the RACES method, which will basically do the same thing. It's just different acronyms that mean the same thing. MLA is always required. I'm not going to cover MLA in this presentation because it is covered in the first unit. I'm just going to talk about some better ways to use textual evidence. The top layer, if you think about an Oreo cookie, it has a cookie, icing, cookie. Okay, it always has a layer. The top layer, when you're talking about quotations and using citations, is to state or introduce the point you're making about the fact you are discussing in your own words. So this would be where you answer the question, present the topic of a paragraph. Also, one of the ways that you can include a sandwich is to give a little bit of beginning to your quotes, meaning this character said, or one of the ones that I use is on page blank, the author stated that, or according to the text, for example. In the middle is where you're going to want to include relevant facts to your topic or point, the signal phrase, direct quote, paraphrase, and paraphrase. Okay, so remember, direct quotes are the strongest type of evidence. You can use paraphrase, but even if you do use a paraphrase, you really should add an MLA in text citation so that we know where that information came from. By signal phrase, this is indicating that a quote is coming, a little bit of tagline at the beginning of the citation. The bottom layer is to elaborate in your own words about the fact to close it up. So you don't want to just give a quote and then move on. You're going to want to assume that your reader doesn't understand why you are including that quote. And it's more so that your teacher can understand, knows that you understand the usage of your quote and how it supports your point. You have to show why that quote supports your point. You can't just throw it in there and say, reader gets it. I know you get it. No, you have to tell your reader how it supports your point. Your word choice is very important. Make sure you don't use overused words. Your spelling and punctuation count. Sentence structure, stay away from simple sentences. You can include simple sentences, but make sure you use some sentence variety. Like I said, I'm going to skip over some of these. Let's take a look at some difficult. This is the answer to a question: how did the big first and second little pig survive the big bad wolf? Answer: they ran away. That's a paraphrase of basically the whole story. This is a sour example. Okay. These next two, click, come on. Okay, this is a sweet example. Why couldn't the wolf blow down the third little pig's house? The wolf couldn't blow down the third pig's house. In the story, it says the house was made of bricks. Even the wolf tried, huffed and puffed. The third pig's house was too strong. So what this does is it includes a bit of an answer. It includes a bit of a preface to the quote. It includes a quote, and it includes a follow-up. The third pig's house was too strong. The preface here is in the story it said, the quote was included, and then the third pig's house was too strong is included there in the end to further clarify. This is another sweet example. From the story, we can infer that what is the strongest building material? There were 3 building materials used in the story, but the brick was the strongest. Here's your quote. The whole huffed and puffed that couldn't blow down the house made of bricks. Therefore, the story illustrates the brick is stronger than straw or bricks. So yes, your reader can probably tell that by using the quote, huffed and puffed, they couldn't blow down the house of bricks, that the strongest method is therefore building your house of bricks. But your teacher needs to know that you understand that how to use that quote. You need to follow it up with that bottom key of that Oreo. Okay, we're not going to analyze a model paper. I am going to take you, however, to my classroom wall. I'm waiting for the webcam to start. Sometimes the Wi-Fi here is a little sketchy. Okay, there we are. Hi. Okay, this is my classroom with my lovely lights and my name. I go for a walk over this way. It is an off day today, so all my chairs are up on the tables. Okay, so this is my wall of how to handle citations and quotes. Okay, this is something that I'm teaching my 6th graders now how to do, and it's something that starts early. It's something that takes a lot of practice, which is why we're working on different methods. So I'm going to go over just a couple here. So up here we have R. These are my different racist posters. My top one here is restate. Use all important words from the question to create a statement. Okay, you kind of see that there. All right, and we have answer. Answer all parts of the question in complete sentences. Cite. Cite, which is use evidence from your text to support your answer. Explain. This is the one that students have the hardest time with. Every single time that we use this method on different topics, they're always asking me, well, how do I use the E? How do I use the E? Okay, you need to explain how the citation that you just used helps you answer your question. Okay, so explain, and then I have a C and an E again that do the same thing. You always need to cite and explain. This means that you need to have 2 pieces of evidence. The last one is sum it up, which is just sum up your answer by restating the question and creating a closing sentence. Over here, what I have is different sentence starters to using a quote, as well as ways to follow it up. Okay, some of these are a little simpler because, again, like I said, this is a 6th grade classroom, but some of these are really good ways for even a high schooler using citations. So I'm going to go over a couple of them that are my favorite. Up here, this one says, on page blank, the text stated. You can also say the author stated, or if you're including, you're writing about a particular author, like a lot of you are coming up on the Twain paper, or you may have already written it. You could say, on page blank, Twain stated blank. Okay. This is a way to introduce a direct quote. Here I have a way to use an indirect quote. On page blank, the author stated what? And this is an example of an indirect quote. On page 5, the author stated that Mitchell has allergies and is often sick. So that's a paraphrase. Paraphrases are fine to use, but you're not going to want to use them in place of direct evidence. You still do need to have 2 quotes per body paragraph. That's what we're looking for when we're grading. Another way of introducing a direct quote is saying according to the text. That's a good one. These are connectors. The ones that say connectors up in the corner, those are ways of following up your quote, so your sentence after your quote. You include your quote, then you can add in, use a connector. This one says, for example, that one can sort of be used to follow a quote up, but it's not really a good one. But this one is. This one shows, this shows that. Okay? This statement shows that. This character feels this way. Or this question shows that. Or this event shows that the author feels in this particular way. Or whatever the case may be. You can also say this is important because... Over here, this one says, this proves that. That's a very strong one as well. This proves that. Be more specific when you use the word this, but you could say this event, this quote, this statement, this question, this description, whatever it might be. This proves that Twain believes XYZ, or this proves that Huckleberry Finn, I can't think today. Anyways, this is a way of introducing an indirect quote. The narrator stated that, blah, blah, blah. This is evidence because I prefer this one to be used a little larger. This is evidence of whatever. This is evidence that Twain believes this because. Always use that because. This is the most important part. You want to explain why that quote is important. Why that quote, there, let me make it bigger for you. Why that quote is useful for your reader to help understand your thesis. Okay, every quote wants to go back and support that thesis somehow. The author stated, so you could also say Twain stated on page whatever level other. The character stated, so that's a little bit more specific to, especially literary analysis. You can use those. Let's see where are some other good ones. Based on the information given in the text, that's a great one that you can use based on the information given in the text. According to the graph, that's not really going to be relevant for literary analysis. I also teach, my kids are working on science fair soon, so that's one of the things that we'll be working on. And that's one that they can use on that one, according to the graph. Yeah. Let's see. I think those are most of the good ones that I think that you would find useful. So the important thing is to remember that we require 2 quotes per body paragraph in a literary analysis essay. So in a literary analysis essay, you're probably going to have about 6. Okay. You can get a little fudgy with some of those if you want to use an indirect quote, but I do want to see in-text citations for those quotes, both direct and indirect. And we do require that quotes are introduced and followed up. They need to be sandwiched in there. They can't just be thrown in there. If you don't, in Turnitin, we got a little mark that we put on there. I think it's called float. We don't want quotes floating in the middle of your paragraph. They need to be somehow introduced and followed up so that we understand that you understand how that quote supports your thesis. Okay? If you have any questions on how to use quotes, you can always refer to Al at Purdue. I just posted in the news announcements for this class a demo essay written by our department head, Mallory Kirkland. She read a fantastic literary analysis essay demo, and she's going to show you some ways to use quotes and stuff in there. So yeah, just make sure that you do a good job in your rough drafts. I'll always give you feedback. Say, okay, float, this quote's floating, you need to unfloat it, you need to anchor it down a little stronger. So if you have any questions, be sure to let me know.